In Norse mythology, the universe is held together by a vast cosmic ash tree, whose branches spread over the whole world, reaching even above heaven itself. Yet, far below, beneath the deepest wells that nourish it, something is gnawing hungrily upon its roots. While among the branches, strange creatures feed quietly upon its green leaves and carry bitter words and insults up and down its trunk. Meanwhile, perched upon the tree's highest branches is a great eagle who watches all of this unfold and does nothing. The Old Norse called this tree Yggdrasil and viewed it as the ash that binds everything together. But the gods of the North don't live in a perfect universe, they live in one that's slowly decaying. Yggdrasil is dying, and has been from the very start. So what really is Yggdrasil? What do the creatures living in this tree tell us about how Norse myth views reality? And why do the Norse gods live in a dying universe that hangs from a wounded tree? Join me to find out the answers to these questions and more as we dive into the myths of the Old World. The idea of the World Tree is one of the most common and widespread images in world mythology. We find examples from all over the globe, from the Tree of Life in the Book of Genesis, to Ushvutha from the Bhagavad Gita, and even the Saber World Tree from Mayan culture, as well as many more. Most of these trees symbolize stability, connection, renewal, and some idea of sacred ascent, but Yggdrasil is a little different. We first hear of Yggdrasil in the first part of the Poetic Edda, the Valar's prophecy or Völuspá, which tells us,
"I know an ash standing called Yggdrasil, a lofty tree, sprinkled with white loam. From there come the dews that fall into the valleys. Evergreen it stands above earth's well."
We'll return to this quote again later because it tells us far more about Yggdrasil than it immediately appears to. For now, it's enough to know that the mighty cosmic ash tree is the thing that holds the universe together, connecting the various realms to one another and being the location where the Aesir, or the gods, gather to hold council and pronounce judgments. Which realms am I talking about? Well, if we jump to the Prose Edda, we find a conversation taking place between Gangleri, the Wanderer, and a man called Javanhar, just as high. Two names which both seem to carry deliberate echoes of Odin, and who are discussing the nature of Yggdrasil in more detail. Javanhar tells us that
"Its branches spread over the whole world and even reach above heaven. It has 3 roots very wide asunder. One of them extends to the Aesir, another to the frost giants in that very place where was formerly Ginnungagap, and the third stands over Niflheimr, and under this root, which is constantly gnawed by Nidhogg, is Hvegelmir."
If you're new to Norse mythology, then all this may require a brief explanation. First, when Snorri Sturluson says that the tree's branches spread out over the whole world, what he means is every layer of existence. It is the cosmic structure of everything that is. That's this world, the land of the gods, the land of the dead, and everything else as well, which we'll get into shortly. Unlike the many other world trees to be found all over the globe, the Eddas do not describe Yggdrasil as peaceful. In the Lay of Grimnir, we're told that
"The ash Yggdrasil suffers greater hardship than men know of."
it's worse than that, in fact. Yggdrasil is dying, and it has been from the very beginning. Partly this is because of the creatures that endlessly feed upon its leaves, but mainly it's because beneath the roots is something called Nidhogg. Hold on to that name, because this creature may turn out to be one of the most important figures in Norse cosmology. But before we can understand what is gnawing on the roots of reality, we first need to understand what those roots actually are and where they lead. We are told that each root extends into a different realm, and it's worth taking a look at these realms individually, because without them, it's impossible to understand how Norse myth thinks the universe works. Now, there isn't time to cover each realm in exhaustive detail, and of course they'll all have their own videos in the future, but for now we'll start with the first root, which, we are told, leads us to the Aesir. The Aesir are the gods: Odin, Thor, Loki, Tyr, and all the others. And the gods, of course, live in Asgard. Interestingly, he doesn't say that the roots extend to Asgard, but rather extends among the gods themselves. This tells us that, in this instance, the place is less important than the people who occupy it. The gods in Norse myth provide divine order, law, and governance to the universe, telling us that these things are crucial for the universe's existence. These things, and one other thing, that is also found at the bottom of this root. For here we also find the Well of Urth, which roughly means the Well of Fate. It is here that the gods hold their councils and pronounce judgments, and it's also here that the Norns dwell. Remember the quote from earlier? The white loam comes from this well, and it is with this that the Norns washed the roots of Yggdrasil, preventing the tree from drying out and keeping it alive. So this isn't simply a well, it's also the cosmic assembly place where fate is woven, judgments are made, and the roots of reality itself are tended. Yet, it's not the only well, for beneath each root lies another, and each well appears to feed reality with something different. So yes, fate sustains the tree, but fate alone cannot stop it from dying. The second route leads to the frost giants, or Hreinthursar, ancient beings of primal frost, among whom are some of the oldest and wisest beings in Norse myth. Some of them are hostile, some are very wise, and they're not as straightforwardly evil as is sometimes imagined, even if they do live
in that very place where was formerly Ginnungagap.
Ginnungagap was the primordial void, the chaos out of which all things emerged in the first place. Nothing but a yawning gap, and not exactly a holiday destination. But again, the route doesn't lead to the land where they live, but to the frost giants themselves, truly ancient beings who understand the universe more deeply than anyone else. Importantly, beneath this root lies the Well of Wisdom, or Memory. This is the famous well where Odin sacrifices an eye in his quest for knowledge. Wisdom in Norse mythology is hugely important. It's so important that the All-Father himself would sacrifice an eye for a single drink of its waters, and so important that these waters form one of only 3 wells that also nourish Yggdrasil itself. But even wisdom cannot stop the tree from slowly dying. The third and final route is the deepest and the darkest, and, for this discussion at least, probably the most interesting. This route leads to Niflheimr, which roughly translates to the world of mist. It is the oldest of the 3 realms, and there's nothing really in it. We do know that it's a land of primordial cold and obscurity, disordered pre-cosmic matter, all cloaked in frozen mists and poisoned rivers, all of which feed reality. But that's about it. Beneath it is yet another well, and this one is called Hvegelmir, which roughly means roaring cauldron. This well, just like the others, is one of the very engines of creation. So we have fate in one well, wisdom and memory in another, and pure primordial power in the third and deepest of them all. These are the things that feed the roots of Yggdrasil, and all existence. But neither fate, nor wisdom, nor raw primordial power can keep corruption from the roots, because beneath those roots, beneath the roaring cauldron, something terrible lives, and it is always hungry. Yggdrasil is not merely rooted in strange places, it's inhabited by strange things. Perhaps the oddest and most famous of them all is Ratatosk, a name that roughly means travelling tooth. Ratatosk is a squirrel who runs the length of Yggdrasil's trunk, carrying insults from the deepest roots all the way up to the Nameless Eagle perched upon the highest branches, and of course, back down again. The eagle certainly has its say, responding in kind to the insults that are carried up to it from below, but it would appear that the place where the insults originate is beneath the deepest root, where the vast dragon Nidhogg gnaws. Nidhogg is a word that roughly means the one who strikes with dishonour or corruption, and it has been there from the very start. Decay, dishonour, and corruption, it seems, are necessary conditions of the Norse universe. This is massively important to understanding how Norse myth thinks the world works. The universe is fed from three wellsprings, one of fate and justice, one of wisdom and memory, and one of raw primordial power. These are the things that nourish the tree and the universe. These are the things that are essential to it growing and sustaining itself, but underneath, gnawing at the roots and slowly killing it, is dishonour, decay, and corruption. Interestingly, when we look at the story of Ragnarok, we find that one of the first things to go is honour, and corruption enters at the heart of society, to the point that
Brethren for the sake of mere grain shall kill each other, and no one shall spare either his parents or his children.
Ragnarok is, of course, the end of the world, so it's interesting that the corrosive force at the roots of Yggdrasil makes its presence felt in our society before the chaos of war ever begins. This tells us that, so far as Norse myth is concerned, the deepest threat to reality isn't open chaos, it's the slow erosion of honour and proper conduct. Meanwhile, as Nidhogg feeds hungrily at the roots, and Ratatosk carries its insults up and down the trunk, in the branches, Four Harts, or stags, are eating the leaves. Their names are Dain, Dvalin, Duneyr, and Durathror. Again, their names are significant. Dain roughly means the lifeless or faded one. Dvalin translates to something like the sleeper, or the one who lingers. Translations for the names of the other two stags are less certain, but Duneyr could mean the weary one, and Durathror could have something to do with persistence, though this is heavily debated. But if these names mean what many scholars suspect them to mean, then we have a really interesting quartet eating away at the branches of reality. Death, sleep, fatigue, and enduring time. This does seem to hint at the idea of a cyclical universe, and the stag symbolism would appear to reinforce that, given that they're known for the seasonal shedding of antlers. And at the very top of the tree, an eagle, symbolic of keen sight and wisdom, just watches. It does absolutely nothing to discourage the hearts from feeding upon the tree's leaves. It makes no effort to stop Nidhogg from consuming the roots. We're not told why, but we can guess from what we know already. When we look at other cosmologies from across the world, we usually find a golden age ruined by sin or some sort of paradise lost. But in Norse myth, the world is born under strain. Nidhogg is there from the very beginning. The hearts are there from the very beginning, and the Norns must constantly tend the tree. They must constantly maintain reality, because if they don't, while death and sleep and weariness would consume its branches, while corruption and dishonour would gnaw away at its very foundations. Reality itself would come tumbling down all the faster. This isn't presented as a flaw or some sort of accident. These are the original conditions of creation. Maybe that's why the eagle, watching everything unfold before it, does nothing to prevent it. It's not up to the eagle to decide the outcome. That is not its purpose. The outcome is decreed by fate. After all, it is only in the waters of the well of fate that the roots are washed and thus maintained. I can't help but tie this back into Ragnarok, in which the ultimate point of the story is that to see fate, to know your own doom, does not mean that you can escape it. Odin knows this very clearly. It's why he battles Fenrir on the field of Yggdrasil, knowing full well that he will lose and that he will die. Fate and honour dictates it. It's the right thing to do regardless of the outcome. This is ultimately why the Norse placed the entire universe upon a wounded tree that's already dying. Creation and destruction are not wholly separate systems. In Norse myth, they seem to grow from the exact same roots. The system simply wouldn't work without one or the other. And as we discovered in our Ragnarok episode, in the Norse imagination, success is not measured by outcome. It's measured by how you carry yourself in a universe that was never meant to last. Ragnarok shows us this very clearly. Before monsters and the fire, before the gargantuan wolves and Midgard's serpents, human bonds fail. Brothers kill brothers. Kinship collapses and oaths mean nothing. That is when Yggdrasil begins to tremble. When men stop keeping faith with one another is when dishonour reaches the surface. That is when the corruption that's been gnawing at the roots since the dawn of time finally reaches the branches. Wisdom and knowledge is one of the most important things in Norse myth. Odin, after all, is constantly chasing it, but as valuable as they clearly think it is, the Norse did not believe that wisdom could save you. They didn't believe that strength could save you. They didn't even believe that the gods themselves could save you. For the Norse, the truth of reality was far more difficult to swallow. To them, the world was always fraying, always under strain, always moving towards its end from the very beginning. What matters, what really matters, is how you choose to conduct yourself, knowing that one day, in the end, it will all be over regardless. What matters is whether you choose to stand upright anyway. Odin does this in his battle with Fenrir, Thor does this in his battle with Jormungand, and Yggdrasil does this with us and with our world. Let's return to the very first quote that we looked at in this episode.
I know an ash standing called Yggdrasil, a lofty tree, sprinkled with white loam. From there come the dews that fall into the valleys. Evergreen it stands above earth's well.
Even as death feeds upon its very branches, even as corruption gnaws upon its roots, Yggdrasil still gives dew to the valleys. It still nourishes our world. It still does what it must, even though one day it too will fall.